On the evening of April 28, 2025, around 12:33 local time, electricity vanished within 5 seconds for much of Spain. Roughly 15 gigawatts, about 60% of the country's power, disappeared in an instant. Bringing down the entire power grid, Portugal, which relies on the same system, was also plunged into darkness. It was one of the most widespread blackouts in modern history. The power didn't return to most of Spain until the early morning of April 29th. Although Portugal mostly got its power back by then, Spain fully recovered around 4 o'clock CEST. But what caused this massive blackout? And how did such a well-developed country with a robust grid system fail so catastrophically? We know now that the blackout resulted from a combination of factors. First, there was a sudden voltage surge in southern Spain, which triggered the automatic shutdown of 3 key substations: Granada, Badajoz, and Seville. This tripped off 2.2 gigawatts from the grid, enough to cause major destabilization. As a result, other protection systems kicked in to disconnect further assets, eventually isolating the Iberian grid from the rest of Europe. Second, the grid operator, Red Eléctrica de España, or RE, had miscalculated how much of the grid would be affected and failed to call upon sufficient backup. The Spanish grid incorporated less than 10 gigawatts of thermal generators, like gas or hydro, which could have managed the voltage and provided inertia when things went awry. Instead, we relied heavily on renewables at that time. Although wind farms are generally connected to the grid through step-up transformers that can regulate voltage, they couldn't compensate for the shortfall that night. Third, some power plants failed to perform as expected. They were contractually obligated and paid to help stabilize the voltage if needed, but many didn't pull their weight. For example, the 2.3 gigawatts gas-fueled Andorra power plant, owned by Naturgy, was supposed to deliver 1.2 gigawatts of reactive power when things started going wrong. But it only delivered half of that and then disconnected from the grid, according to RE. Finally, fourth, pre-existing issues with the grid's stability played a role. Half an hour before the blackout, low-frequency oscillations of roughly 0.2 Hz were recorded between the Iberian grid and the continental European network. They had been damped, but indicated a vulnerable system. Also, the loss of synchronous inertia due to the high share of renewables made the grid more unstable. These 4 factors combined to overwhelm the system. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. The blackout killed a handful of people due to fires, carbon monoxide poisoning, and the failure of critical medical equipment. It also disrupted transport, commerce, healthcare, and communications. Rail, air, and metro services across Spain and Portugal came to a halt. Emergency services were stretched thin, and thousands of people were stranded or stuck in elevators. In the aftermath, politicians and power companies traded blame. Critics pointed fingers at the grid operator and power utilities like Iberdrola, Endesa, and Naturgy, alleging they cut corners and prioritized profits over reliability. The power companies defended themselves, though, saying they complied with regulations and market rules. The government insisted it wasn't a problem with renewables, pointing out that the grid had operated with similar mixes of renewables before without issue. In the immediate hours and days of the incident, a lot of wild theories were put forward. Some theories about the blackout have already been debunked. Officials and government ministers have ruled out a cyberattack as the cause. Initially, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said it was not intentional, while the country's industry minister Reyes Maroto later stated it wasn't a cyberattack. One intriguing theory floated by some in the media was that a rare atmospheric phenomenon known as induced atmospheric vibration caused by strong winds hitting power lines had somehow destabilized the grid. REN, the Portuguese power system operator, briefly suggested this explanation before quickly deleting the post and apologizing for the confusion. No evidence has emerged to support the idea. As for whether the blackout was caused by the variability of renewable energy sources, especially solar PV, ministers, EU energy bodies, and analysts say it wasn't the primary cause. The mix of renewables on the grid that night was similar to other days and weeks, and the grid had operated just fine. So what happens next? Spain and Portugal are pushing ahead with reforms to prevent another blackout. They include new €1.6 billion EU-backed power interconnector between Spain and France. Set to launch in 2028, the link should make the Iberian grid more resilient, because it'd be so reliant on just 2 interconnectors with France and little direct connection with other European grids. Spain is also planning to mandate stricter grid planning and capacity margins, requiring power companies to keep enough synchronous sources and reactive power plants online during peak hours to prevent blackouts. Another upcoming royal decree will toughen safeguards for voltage control and require better coordination between the grid operator and generators. Lastly, while not related to the blackout, it highlighted the vulnerability of smaller generators to cyber exposures. Authorities are ordering all generators with a capacity above 10 megawatts to undergo cybersecurity audits to identify and eliminate potential weaknesses. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Please like and subscribe to our channel.